Hello, welcome back. I'm Mike Malcolm, and this is the second video in the Autism and Special Needs Vacation series where we talk about, vacationing with autism and special needs. And today we're talking about pre-planning, both in general and from a financial standpoint. So, first off, we're going to start with deciding on the purpose of your vacation. There are two steps that are tied for the most important one planning for a vacation: creating a budget and deciding on the purpose of a vacation. Often these happen far in advance of actually planning the vacation, but are integral to the entire vacation planning process. Nearly everyone is familiar with the purpose and reason behind creating a budget, and we'll talk about that later in the video. Not very many people actually sit and think about the purpose of a vacation. You might be saying to yourself right now, of course I know the purpose of a vacation, Mike Malcolm. Of course I know the purpose. The purpose of a vacation is to relax and have fun. Everyone knows that. Well, yes and no. Often, yes. Always? No. Usually. Many times, and often, the purpose of vacation is to relax and unplug from life. Yeah. Yet, vacation can also be more than that, and less than that, and something else. It's about... Well, let's get to some examples. Alright, so let's look at some different types of vacations. Visiting friends and family. For some people, this might be a lot of fun. For some people, not so much. But they might do it because they love the people they're visiting. And parts of it might be fun, but the whole thing might not be. They might not even have a choice in the matter. They might do it because it's something that they feel they should do and that they care about the other person, and they're doing it for the other person. It might be to visit an aging grandparent or great-grandparent. It might be to visit a parent or an aging parent. It might be so that their kids can have fun with a grandparent or an aunt, with one of the... It might be to visit a sibling, etc. It can be a situation for holiday trips, for holiday trips, to visit friends and family for holidays. That's very common. And that's not necessarily to relax and unplug, although it might come up, but that's not necessarily the focus. The focus is on family and connection. Another one, amusement, really common. This one has to do with relaxing and unplugging. And it's one of the most... I didn't go here first, and I know this is probably the most common form of vacation when you think of it, or one of the most common. It's up there, and it's theme park based vacations. When you think of it, you think of the Big Mouse, you think of Disney, as I was implying there. You think of Disney, you think of Hershey Park, you name the theme park, you think of these various extravagant hotels with all of their amusements and entertainments. Think of all of their flashiness and relaxation that comes with it, and rest and detachment from life and reality and everything that comes with it. You think of, that form of a vacation. But there are others besides visiting friends and family and amusement. There's some that you're probably thinking of that we're pretty familiar with, but we'll get to some of those too, such as the beach and just relaxing, just lazing around, just the traveling. It might not be a beach, it might be going to faraway places, being the tourist or tourism vacations, where you go and you travel and you go and see places and sights, which also ties into a new emerging form over the past decade of vacation, which is social media focused vacations, where people go places just so that they have those tweets or those social media posts about, I've been here, I've seen this, I've stood here, I've basked in the glow of the Mona Lisa. Aren't you jealous? Not my cup of tea, but it's a huge industry. The social media based tourism industry is huge. Now, another one after the tourism based vacation experience is, we're going to get into some that are less thought of, two that are less thought of now. And I want to point out before we get into these last two that this list is not exclusive. You can probably come up with some that are not on this list, but these five or six, are the primary ones on my list that I've come up with. If you have any that you thought of that are not on my list, please throw them down in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it. Let me know. I love the feedback. Education. Learning. The brain stuffs. It's nice. I like to keep it going, growing, learning, all that fun stuff. For families looking to bolster the learning activities for kids, for themselves as adults, can be visiting museums when you're not going for that selfie with the Mona Lisa or a Van Gogh or any of those things. For those looking to, just learn something new. Maybe you're going to the Wright Brothers Museum. Maybe you're going to a natural history museum or an art museum or something else. There's tons of museums, zoos, aquariums, libraries, national parks. Almost any vacation, if approached correctly, can be an educationally informed experience. Even something that's traditionally not viewed of as an educationally informed or directed vacation can be reconstrued and reconstructed as an educationally directed experience to learn about something, including even entertainment-based vacations. There are ways to reconstruct things such as a Disney-based vacation into something where you're sitting and examining your own financial structures or your own thoughts or your own... you could come up with something, I'm sure. Or you can turn into some kind of sociology-based research project, I'm sure, as well. That wouldn't be much of a stretch at all, I don't think. But education-based vacations, I've digressed there slightly. But yes, any vacation can become educational, but there are vacations that are much easier to construe and point into educational-based vacations when you're focusing on locations that are already focused on them. All right, and then we have religious-based vacations. So for those who are religious, there are religious-based vacations. Vacation might not be the term usually attached for it. It's not often. It's usually a pilgrimage is usually the term we attach to it. But some might argue that the term pilgrimage and vacation can be synonymous. You're going on a trip. You're essentially getting a breath of fresh air and a detachment from your normal routines, and you're finding something new, and you're finding a new lease on life. Through this, you're getting new vigor in your life. One could argue it is a vacation, a reinvigoration. Is that 100% accurate? I don't know. I'm not a theologist. I don't know. But you're going on a trip for religious reasons as possible. And you can call it, when you call into your office, you're saying it's a vacation because that's what your office would book it as. Whatever. Whether or not this might not apply to everyone and probably doesn't. But a religious-based vacation is possible. For some individuals and families, religion is a cornerstone of their lives. for them going on a vacation for religious reasons. As I said, might not be called vacation, probably called, again, pilgrimage, or you might call it a vacation. I don't know. But it's something to consider with a focus on that faith, whether it's a trip to historical location, a trip to a temple, a mosque, a church. Might include stopping by and listening to or visiting important individuals or historical locations tied to that faith. And one unique difficulty that comes up, especially for individuals with special needs and families with special needs around religious vacations, is the expectations with behaviors at locations or events that can be difficult for those who aren't neurotypical, especially those with ASD. That said, some religious places, a slowly growing number at the time of this video's creation, are becoming more understanding of that. And there are some that have a historical understanding of that. I recognize that. That have a historical understanding of individuals who have special needs or are disabled, etc. I recognize that it's not a universal thing, the difficulties, and that some locations might even go out of their way. But there's also a number of difficulties as well. That said, there's a growing number of places for religious based trips that are more accommodating for individuals with ASD and or other special needs. And there's one more. This is the sixth and last one, I guess. Vacation to make a difference. Sometimes a vacation is decided upon in a much shorter time frame, with a primary aim not on one's enjoyment. So this is very much the not rest and relaxation end of the bargain. This is the, I'm not going on a vacation to rest. I'm not going on a vacation to have fun. This is the humanitarian vacation. Some might say it's not a vacation. Well, that depends on how you look at it. Some people feel very invigorated afterwards, but it's not restful. There's a difference there. They might feel invigorated afterwards, feel better, but they are exhausted. They're not going after their own enjoyment. They're focused on being there for others. They see a need, a drastic need that's come up, say a massive flooding or some other massive urgent humanitarian crisis, and they decide that this specific crisis is one that has their name on it, and they put in PTO or however their office works, and they rush off to go help. And as with all types and purposes of vacation, there are unique challenges that can show up for individuals and families with ASD or other special needs who are traveling with or for this purpose. That said, it isn't impossible to travel or have vacations with this focus on giving time or energy to make an impact on the lives of others, and these vacations can bring an incredible amount of joy for those families that seek this and that have this as a cornerstone. This is not something that's part of our family, my family at this time, but I know families that have this, and all the power to them. It's wonderful to see. It's really cool. And it has its own unique difficulties and challenges. But they can be worked through and worked with, as all these vacations can. Any vacation for any reason can have a plethora of logistical complexities that need to be considered. No matter the focus, there's always plenty of fun and rest to be had on any vacation by any and all family members. Sometimes it takes a little of extra planning to ensure that outcome. Additionally, by knowing the focus of a vacation, you can plan extra ways into the vacation to accentuate that focus or to accentuate the needed rest or other time for one or more individuals of your family to get what they need to keep going and to thrive during that vacation and to savor the focal points of that trip, whatever they might be. So now that we've talked about the focus of the trip, let's move on to budget, because these two sort of, if you know the focus and you know the budget, you can start, and you have a budget together, you can move on to some of the other things. You have these basic foundations together. You can move on to some of the more, they're the two most foundational parts. From that, you can build on with everything else through the rest of the trip. All right, creating a budget. It's crucial for a vacation. It's especially crucial when vacationing as a family. The best way I've found to set up a budget for vacation is what I call the envelope and bin method, or the bin and envelope method. It doesn't really matter the order. The direction is sort of irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. And it doesn't have to be done with envelopes. You can do it digitally, but we'll get to that. So it's a personal favorite of mine, personal favorite tactic of mine that I recommend for families and individuals who are planning to go on vacation, who want to have a budget and want to be able to visualize it well. I call it the envelope and bin method, again, or bin and envelope method. I use it either direction pretty synonymously. It's a simple process that can be done numerically for those who just like numbers, but for those who are more visual or hands-on, it can also be done in a hands-on, physical, and or visual way as well, for physical or visual representations that help make things. It's pretty versatile in that way for whatever works best for you and your family to represent or to parse out what's needed as the vacation goes. So, step one, you can approach this in two ways. You can create you can actually skip this step if needed. But personally, I think it's crucial for me to set a total maximum budget. A threshold that says that when we're planning this budget, there is a largest amount of money that we cannot exceed for this trip, because this is the most amount that we have that we can say can go to this trip, because we are trying to be financially savvy. That's just how I work. That's my personal, how we work here. It's our thing. We set aside a amount of money that we can say that's the amount that we have total for this trip. And if our budget through the rest of this process can't fit for that, then we have to wait longer until it can. So step two is we figure out what we need for transportation, food, and accommodation. And so we set aside some money for transportation for each day that we need transportation. If we're just driving down to grandma's and driving back from grandma's, if we're flying down to grandma's and she's picking us up and she's driving us back to the airport and we're flying back and we just need that flight money down, flight money back, and whatever we need for food or whatever, then we set that aside. Again, these things vary, and we will talk about a little bit on some of these topics as we go through this. Some of these topics will show up in later videos again in this series, talking about accommodation-based information. We won't necessarily talk about the budgeting end of it, but we will talk about things to look for in transportation and food and accommodation and prepping and planning and the logistical end of it, and things to look out for and things to think about and things to planning and logistics and contacting and all of those things. We'll go into those kind of thoughts more in this series. So as you plan, you can think about those things, and some of those things for you might impact budget. I can't decide that for you. Just something to keep in mind. Step 3, money for shared events and tickets. So this is things like admission tickets, getting into theme parks, getting into events like circus, like Cirque du Soleil or Circus, or if your kids want to see some kind of dolphin show, or I don't know. Or if you want to see, say, the Blue Angels do some kind of air-based acrobatics. I don't know what your family's looking for. Some kind of train ride would be a shared events or tickets thing. Again, admissions to parks, that's shared events, shared tickets, that kind of stuff. Step 4. So the money that you have left over that you want to set up financial budgets for each person for fun. What we have in our house, we have fun money for each day for a vacation. So it's even for the kids who can't have money in their own pocket to go and buy their own things, we set aside money to buy things for them or treats for them while we're out. Like if one of our kiddos gets really fascinated by something or really fixated on something, we want to treat them. Or if they become really dysregulated and there's something extra we want to get them or whatnot, that can come from this, or it can come from something separate as well. But that's the dysregulation situation and those emergency situations. Those are something completely different. The emergency situation does not. That's a completely separate situation. But this does not have to impact those budgets. But for the most fun for everyone, we do like to set up the fun money for family members to treat themselves as they get older, have their own fun money set aside. And my wife and I have it set aside for ourselves, where we have a budget for ourselves, and it works well for older kids, I've found. A certain amount of money each day. And there's 2 general ways to approach this budgeting step. And one is to come up with a flat amount for the whole family, and then you break it down based upon number of days, and then break that down based upon number of family members for each day. So, for example, if you've got $700 and you're on a 7-day vacation, you're going to be there for 7 days, having fun for 7 days. So you've arrived and you have 7 days there, and then you leave. That's $100 a day, and you've got 4 members of your family. Everyone gets $25 a day if you're splitting it evenly. Because there's 4 25s and 100. Or you can set aside envelopes for each person, and each person doesn't necessarily have to have the same budget. Kids can have more or less than parents. People of different ages can have different amounts based upon their ages, and you can just set aside in this envelope, and I'll do the visual for this in a moment, and I'll go over that visuals for this both with a spreadsheet and with the actual envelopes and bins in a moment after we finish going through these steps. Different ways to do this. And you take that money and you put it in an envelope, and you group those envelopes for each person so that they have you can just pull out an envelope. But there are also, I do want to point out, there are apps that make this easier to do, where you can just click a button and give them the amount of money into a digital wallet for the day. For those families who are inclined to do that, there's a lot of ease to that and a lot of help for that. It's whatever works best for you and your family. And so again, step 5 is on each morning of the vacation. Each individual gets either their wad of cash, or you press the button and you give them the digital distribution for them via whatever app you're using for your family. So now let's take a minute to look at how that looks, both with the envelopes and bins, and then first with the envelopes and bins, and then with Excel or spreadsheet application of your choice, and then we'll move forward.
The producers of this show have decided, in the interest of time and your easy entertainment or education, to remove the demonstrations of the envelope and bin method. These demonstrations have already been uploaded, and links to both approaches can be found in the description. Thank you for your patience. Now, back to the rest of the show. We hope you enjoy it.
Having the money set aside during planning helps with making sure the vacation can financially happen, and it helps ensure that the money is separate so that it isn't accidentally spent on something else. That's what helps, or one thing that I find really helpful about this separate bins or separate envelopes, is that it acts as barriers to help us keep that money separate during the vacation, so that money doesn't pass between, barring, of course, unforeseen emergencies, which we found really helpful. And I've always found really helpful for others as well. Let's talk about choosing a destination for a minute. So for some families and some people, choosing a destination comes while you're choosing the purpose, and sometimes they just sort of pop up at the same time. You don't really think about either. It just happens. And as we talked about before, not all vacations are for the same intention. Sometimes you go for certain reasons. Sometimes you go for certain purposes. Sometimes you go on a certain vacation because you want to feel a certain thing. You want to feel like a kid again, so you go to a specific theme park or amusement-based extravaganza. Sometimes you go on vacation to visit family. Sometimes you go on vacation to try and, I don't know, feel like you're in college. And some people go on vacation to act like they're in college. That's usually, to learn, etc. Picking a place for a vacation that fits your goal and is really important, obviously. And being intentional about why you're going on vacation. And taking a moment, even after you've figured it out, to be like, why are we actually going on this vacation? Is this actually going to get us the most that we're looking for out of this vacation? For what we're putting into it. Financially, emotionally, everywhere, in every aspect, because it is an investment. It's an investment of your time before you leave, your time while you're there, and your time after you get back, your emotional energy and effort, your physical energy and effort, and your family's physical energy and effort and time. And not to mention your financial investments as well. It's safe to say that anytime anyone goes on a vacation, you should have some kind of a plan and research done. Even if you're fly by the seat, even if you're going to grandma's for the 50th time, having some kind of plan is a good idea. Even if it's just a basic plan for asking for time off from work. It isn't true for everyone to have some kind of a plan. And some people just are like, I'm going to ask for next week off, and they just ask for next week off, and they just leave and go somewhere. That's not necessarily the greatest idea, especially when you've got family members or people involved in the situation who have autism or other special needs. It's good to have the plans. It's good to have some research and backup involved. Since you already have your budget at this point somewhat, since you already have your reasoning figured out, and you probably have a destination figured out, or you have a few that you're considering, it's time to do your research on various parts of your vacation and have a schedule or a plan. It doesn't have to be a rock hard schedule. It doesn't have to be a rock hard solid plan. It's good to have flexibility, even if you're pretty sure you know what you want to do. And it's good to do the research and have some kind of a plan, as I said, even if you are a fly-by-the-seat kind of person or people, because you need some kind of backup or fallback or resources there for you. And these resources should be part of your preparation. Things like accommodations, transportation, activities, communication, potential sensory issues that could come up, dysregulation, and dealing with stress. And these are all things that we're going to talk about going forward in this series more and more. And we're also going to talk about coming back from the vacation as well at the end of the series. And while I am right now and do emphasize researching and planning your vacation, you don't want every moment planned. I know I said you want flexibility. I want to re-emphasize that you need to be flexible. And for those of you that are who are parents like myself, or individuals like myself, of individuals or are individuals with autism and special or other special needs, you recognize that already. You might already have that ingrained in your head that that flexibility needs to be there. But if you're an extended family member, you might not have that ingrained yet. You might not realize that, or if you're a new parent, you might not have that fully integrated into you yet. You're going to need space and time built into your plans for unscheduled things. You're going to need to be ready for things to come up, because they will. They always do for vacations anyway. Surprises always come up on vacations normally. In normal family, and I use normal loosely, but in autistic and other special needs families, they come up with a greater rate of occurrence, and they definitely need, it's worth planning for and it's worth being prepared for. And not enough people prepare for them adequately for normal vacations. And they're worth being prepared for, especially when you have individuals who have needs that you can prepare for because you know them better. And I think arguably that parents and individuals with autism and special needs know their needs a lot better because they become a lot more apparent, even if they can be a bit surprising at times early on. So as we wrap up this introduction, this second video, this introduction to planning, where we've talked about some of the things that we're wrapping it up, and we've talked about some of the things we're going to go over the rest of the series a moment ago. It's necessary to recall the importance, again, like I said, flexibility. Flexibility is important in day-to-day life. I'm not going to re-go over what I just said, that we need flexibility. As much as we need order and structure as autistic individuals often, we rely on that, as I mentioned in the first video. It's part of the foundation, but there needs to be some flexibility for when dysregulation occurs, when things don't go right. There needs to be a flexibility so that we can adapt to the things that happen when dysregulation occurs. There's a lot of surprises that come up on vacation. That's why the flexibility is needed. I've already said that. So, it's not easy to be flexible in life. And so now I'm going to tell you if you need backup plans for your flexibility. It's a good thing to have. Now, they don't have to be, they can be rigid, they can be mildly flexible, your flexibility can be rigid in itself. You can have a backup plan that is a very detailed list of if this, then that. Your backup plans and your flexibility can be a little bit more flexible. Here's some things, we'll try this and then we'll try that. Your backup plans can just be concepts. All three of these ideas are valid backup plans. And I'm about to show you 3 backup plans that I have for the exact same day. Now, this is a family that's created backup plans for day-by-day basis. Or, well, 2 of them are day-by-day basis. But they were created for the day in question. They are backup plans for a specific situation, specific vacation, and they are there to, all 3 of them, they're very different levels of rigidness, but they are all 3 forms of flexibility. They're all 3 backup plans, again, for the same day. And they will help so that if something dysregulation occurs, or something, doesn't have to be dysregulation, if something comes up at any point during the day, they have these backup plans. They don't have to be written down. They can be written down. They can be typed up. They can just be known by someone in the group and memorized by 1 or 2 people in the group, or written down, or whatever. That helps. Whatever works for you and your family, your traveling group, your traveling troupe, whatever you want to call yourselves, it helps. So here we go. Backup plan number 1. Remember, all 3 of these, I'm going to put them up on the screen now. First one up on the screen now, and then at the end of it all, try and show them side by side. So backup plan 1. Step 1, blankie, daddy, positivity, and breathing. Then hydrate. Step is attempt number 2. So this is a try this, if this doesn't work, try the next thing kind of lists. And all 3 of these are going to follow that. Number 2 is hydrate. Are we hungry? We're going to try the tilt-a-whirl. We're going to listen to music. Climbing area, walk and talk, count things, sit by the water, and then go back to the hotel and rest. So again, these lists, they're all try number 1. If 1 doesn't work, go to number 2. If 2 doesn't work, go to number 3. And this is a dysregulation-based backup plan. These backup plans are just for dysregulation. This family in this situation, this family planned these 4 dysregulation-based situations for a vacation to an amusement park. And this is also a family where specifically they have an individual in the family that stims through spinning, and the tilt-a-whirl is actually one of their forms of re-regulation, potential forms of re-regulation. Now, backup plan number 2. That's just a little background. Backup plan number 2. This is essentially the same backup plan, but with a different level of rigidness. Number 1, re-regulate. By that, they meant trying their normal re-regulation attempts, the 3 or 4 things they would try at home. Number 2, hydrate and food. Number 3, check in, do more of the re-regulation attempts if necessary. Number 4, sit by the water. And number 5, go reset at the hotel. And now, so for this family, doing re-regulation might involve checking in and seeing if there's something the family member wanted to do. It might be like, okay, do you want to try the tilt-a-whirl? They're a very communicative family. They ask lots of questions of each other, like, okay, would this help? Would that help? Do you think this would help? Do you think that would help? As part of their re-regulation process. And they know each other well enough to know, okay, you like spinning, you like this, you like that. And so they know to ask those questions. They're familiar with that, so that helps them a lot. Now let's look at the third backup plan for their re-regulation on the vacation. And this one is really very conceptual. It's more bullet points than a do this, then that. It will be okay. Breathe. Everything is adjustable. Remember resources. There's always tomorrow. And so how this works for them, this is mostly for the dad, because he's pretty autonomous, I guess, and pretty familiar with re-regulating and working with the kiddos in question. The mom tends to need more of the bullet point processes that you saw in the previous 2. The dad works more with the conceptual end of things and has more of bullet points in his head, and he just needs more reminders that when things start to break down, that things are okay. So this is the kind of thing he would use, and he gave me this when we worked together on this. And this is, it will be okay. So for him, the conceptual reminders that he needs to remember when things are starting, when dysregulation is going on, that things are okay, to breathe, and he knows how to respond and be there for his kids, and what he needs to do with the other 2 the kind of things that the other 2 backup plans contain for him is sort of a natural response for his family. But he needs to have this bullet point system to remind him that, what's there, that he can ask for help, that everything's going to be okay, that things can change, that, ask for help, as I said, and that, it's okay to go back to the hotel to call it quits, and that, they can try tomorrow, and that if it doesn't work out, that's okay. And that was something that, we talked about, and that was mostly him coming up with what the bullet points he needed, but we talked it through, and, That was mostly his creation. And now looking back at these three, they are very different. They are all three for the same day, but they all three help different. They have different. They convey the same information essentially in different ways. The third one seems very different from the other two because the person in question, someone reading it, might not necessarily know the order of processes of the other ones. But if someone knows their family well enough and they just need the reminders of how to keep their mind where it's supposed to be, those little reminders of it will be okay, just take a breath, everything's adjustable, remember your resources, and there's always tomorrow, those things might remind them enough to do the things they need to do and to be there for their family enough in the other ways because they might know those enough. You know what you need. Hopefully, and if you don't, that's okay. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Sometimes there's trial and error in these things. That's okay. That's okay. Life is a learning process. Family is a learning process. Be kind and gentle with yourself in this. Being a family member or a friend to yourself, being a family member or a friend to individuals with autism and special needs, it can be difficult. Yeah. As an individual with autism and I'm not always in it, like looking back on my life, I know there's times where I've been difficult to be a friend to in my life. And I know that being a parent to autistic kids, it can be difficult. And it's a learning process. And it's worth it. And it's worth being gentle to yourself. You'll learn, and you'll always learn, and it's always going to be learning and growth, and it's worth it. And so sometimes you'll make plans like this, and you'll realize, okay, I didn't have enough information, or maybe I need two different versions of a plan. Maybe I need a backup plan, and I need something that reminds me conceptually that things will be okay. Maybe you need both a conceptual and either a mid or a high level structure plan, because maybe you need the plan and you need the reminder that things are okay in the moment. So maybe you look at the conceptual reminder first, and then you go to the plan, and then you look at the conceptual reminder and you go to the plan. I don't know what you need. That's something you need to figure out for yourself. Obviously I can't tell you what you need, but maybe it's a trial by error thing, and that's okay. So that's a good thing to figure out. And again, even with backups, flexibility is even more important. So maybe the backup does not cover, whatever backup plan you have doesn't cover the situation. Maybe a situation comes up and maybe you realize in the moment, maybe we should try this other thing that's not on the list. That's okay. That's great. That's worth it. Maybe it might be a better idea. Talk with people, communicate. Communication is important. That's a great idea. And always with your vacation, part of this flexibility is making sure there's empty time. Time for individuals in your family to pick things that they want to do that aren't scheduled. Time where there's nothing scheduled so that you can stop and stop on the road to hit someone's favorite fast food restaurant, or stop on the road because someone saw something like a nice rock on the side of the road, or someone saw a nice flower on the side of the road, or that's a pretty sunset, I need to take a picture of it, or who knows, maybe it's just pull over at the side of the road and have a picnic. It's a vacation. Maybe someone saw a sign for a life-size construction of Da Vinci's flying machine made entirely out of thumbtacks. But if you don't have that extra space built into your vacation, that empty space, you're not going to be able to stop and have that moment together, or have that moment to see that. Have that moment for gawking at Van Gogh's sunflowers for an extra minute as a family. Or to stop and have Have your oldest kiddo, gawk at, you know, a baker that they look up to, or have your youngest kiddo stop and gawk at a train that they really think is cool, or whatever your family. Have your spouse stop and gawk at a football jersey they think is cool. I don't know. But having that built-in time can be that extra moment of being able to stop and have that moment of beauty for, if not yourself, then someone in your family that means that much more to you, that brings that extra layer of beauty that might not even cost you anything extra, but just the fact that you built in that little bit of nothing into your plan can make a huge difference. And that's really important. So just don't stress the small things. Be gentle with yourself. Be flexible. Be kind. In the next episode, now that we've gotten to the end of this one, finally, I promise. In the next episode, we're going to talk about accommodations. We're going to finally start talking about more single topic, meat and potatoes. We've gotten through the two foundation episodes, and we're going to start talking meat and potatoes more, as the phrasing goes. Filling. It's substance. I mean, this stuff was substance too. I don't know why they call it meat and potatoes, now that I think about it. But anyway, they should call it veg and meat, but it's importance. All of this stuff is important, but the next video will talk about accommodations, and you won't want to miss it. It's going to be helpful. Before we end this video, though, I want to say thank you for watching. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad your family's here. You and your family are loved. You're important. Your struggles are real. Life can be incredibly difficult and unforgiving. It can be a lot of tears, a lot of late nights, a lot of not getting to take care of yourself. And if you're at a place like that right now, as a parent or a family member of someone with autism or special needs, or other special needs, as I said, know that you're not alone. You are loved. Your family members, your friends, the people you care about, they're loved. You're all worth it. Everything that you're doing is worth it. And what you're doing matters. Thank you for all that you do for the people you care about. I'm Mike Malcolm, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time.